It's 1965, and BBC Two, that new fledgling radical form of broadcasting, gets a new boss, David Attenborough. So David Attenborough has been at the forefront and the centre of the BBC story since then. Can I ask you a very sort of, I suppose, simplistic question, which is, how do you keep cheerful given the catastrophic nature of climate change that you have been telling us about?
I don't think you've got any alternative, really. We use something like 1/200th part, the whole of the human race, 200th part of the energy that comes to us from the sun. If we could harness just 1/200th part of that energy, we would solve all the problems of CO2 and global warming. And we actually know the basic science in order to solve those problems. What is needed now is a concerted attempt by the research scientists of all the developed nations to work out a route map in which you can see where the sticking points are.
You've done some wonderful films for Sky and other broadcasters too. ITV has some relatively competent political interviewers. not quite as successful as the BBC at the moment. Would it be such a terrible thing if the BBC vanished?
Oh, yes. Oh, there's no doubt about that. I mean, the phrase which colleagues of mine in the other sections of the ministry would say is that the BBC keeps us honest. The BBC has to be there and has to do things that others don't tackle because they don't think it's worth it commercially at the moment. One of the things which BBC Two, if I may say so, did very well was to do big, serious programs, take serious subjects, run 31-hour parts and do it, you know. And that requires 3 years.
Yeah.
And there's a great reluctance elsewhere to do on those sort of projects.
The management of the BBC is constantly getting flack from the rest of the media for reasons we all understand. The licence fee, which sustains you all, is not itself sustainable.
That is often stated as a blank statement. I do not believe it to be the case.
You think it is sustainable?
I think that a lot of people I talk to, and I hope I'm not too cliquish, but a lot of the people actually think they're delighted to pay some for what they get from the 4 networks, radio networks, and 3 or 4 television networks.
Civilisation or Life on Earth, which is closer to your heart?
Oh, I have to. Yes. Well, I mean, Civilisation has a very close place in my heart because it was the first of those 13 parters.
Was it really hard to persuade the Director General at the time to spend all that time and money on it?
He didn't know.
He didn't.
How did he know?
Those were the days.
In those days, you had a programme allowance, I had a programme allowance, and I had to produce programmes, and at the end of it, that was the money. And if I chose to deploy my facilities and funds in that way, it was entirely up to me. That was what I was there for.
Is there a point at which the BBC has to be pretty modest and say, this is what we do, we stick to our last, we don't try to expand into other areas?
Yes, I think that is a possibility. I'm certain that politicians believe it to be a responsibility. I mean, it seems to me that members of this House are hypersensitive about the BBC. I accept that the BBC should concentrate its efforts on broadcasting, on sound and television.
Thank you all very much indeed.